Okay, let's try one of these problems we're on review set 2B now. Review 2B. And number 8B is the problem, if I remember right. Yes, 8B. So we have this guy. By the way, that's a 3 on top. Let me make that a little better. That is a 3. So inequality, all right, that's rational. So remember the steps. First, bring everything in the left-hand side. So I'm going to bring this whole thing over, this whole guy right here over. So it's going to become, when I bring that over, it's going to become negative. It's going to be 3 over x minus 1 minus the quantity, I guess you'd say. I don't think you wouldn't say the quantity, 2x plus 1. And then it's greater than 0. Now the next step is we're going to have to try to simplify that, like make it so we can work with it better. So you want to think of it as like it's two fractions with uncommon denominators. So we need to make a common denominator. So the way I would see that, I like to write those things vertically to find your common denominator. And if you're good at it, you can just do it right off the top of your head. So I'm going to write it like this. These are the two original fractions. And then to write a common denominator, you have to find equivalents. Remember, you just multiply the two together. So the common denominator is going to have those two things together. I'm not going to write them out, but it's just x minus 1 times 2x plus 1. And then think about what you did. On the one on the bottom, I multiplied this by x minus 1. And whenever you multiply the denominator by, you got to multiply the numerator by as well. So on top, I'm going to have minus 5 times the quantity x minus 1. And in this one, I'm going to have 3 times the quantity 2x plus 1. And then, so now we have an equivalent expression, I guess you'd say. We've created equivalent fractions for each one of these that now they have common denominators, so we can combine them. So what we would do is we would rewrite that with the numerator, 3 times 2x plus 1, minus 5 times x minus 1 on top. And the bottom would be the two things together, this times this, x minus 1, 2x plus 1. And all that is greater than 0. Now what you can do is you can actually go ahead and simplify the top, do your distributive. So multiply, 3 times 2x is going to be, I'm going to write it right under here, 6x plus 3 minus 5x plus 1, right? Because, no, plus 5, my bad. Because minus 5 times negative 1 is positive 5. That's going to be the numerator, and the denominator is going to be all that. I'm not going to write it. Now, on the top, simplify that. So 6x minus 5x is going to be x. 3 plus 5 is 8. So now I'm going to write it over here to the right. So now on top we have x plus 8. And in the bottom, we have this times that. And all that is greater than 0. Now we have something we can work with. So let me go on the next page for that one. X plus 8 on top. We're trying to make a sign chart. And in the bottom, what was it? It was x minus 1 and 2x plus 1. All greater than 0. So now we go to all those interesting points. So we draw our little, what do you call that? Number line. And let's start with the numerator is an easy one. So when x is negative 8, right? When x is negative 8, that's not good. Then the top becomes 0. So I know negative 8 is going to be a 0 point. I'm going to write the negative 8 on top. So that's going to be like a sign change is going to happen there, I guess you'd say, most likely. So then I want to go a little bit to the left. Let's say negative 10. What happens when x is negative 10? Well, when x is negative 10, that's going to be negative on top, because negative 10 and positive 8. On the bottom, negative 10 and negative 11 is negative 10 and negative 1 is negative 11. So it's negative. And then 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. So that's going to be negative. So I'm substituting in my mind negative 10 in for all these x values. And I'm just kind of keeping track of what happens to the sign. So the sign becomes positive on the bottom, negative on top. So it's negative. So to the left, right at negative 8 is a 0 point. To the left, it's a negative sign. And to the right, let's see, let's put in like negative, let's just say like negative 2. Negative, well, I don't want to go too far. I really should find all my other key points, so let me be careful about that. Let's see my other zones. So now let's go to the denominator before we find out what's on the right. We should find our breakpoints. So we found the breakpoint at negative 8. Then when I come to the denominator, the asymptotes, right? The asymptotes are, I can't let x be 1. So when x is 1, that's an asymptote. So I'm going to draw the dash line. And then when 2x plus 1, I can't let that be 0. So x can't be negative 1/2. So let's say this is 0, negative 1/2. That's another asymptote. I just kind of did that quick in my head, right? Is that right? Negative 1/2. 2 times negative 1/2 is negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, 0. So I can't let the denominator be 0. So now I've got my 3 interesting points. And now I've got my ranges, my zones, I guess. So now I can go back and just pick some numbers. So negative 8 and negative 1/2. So let's just use negative 5. Let's see what happens at negative 5. So I'm going to substitute negative 5 in. And on top, I'm going to have a positive number. And on the bottom, I have a negative, and a negative is a negative. And negative 5 times 2 is negative 10, so I'm going to have a negative. So a negative times a negative is a positive. I'm going to have positive and positive. So it's a positive. When x is negative 5, then this whole thing becomes positive. I don't really care what exactly it equals, but I know it's positive. And I'm confident that everywhere in between it's going to stay the same because I have my next key point. So now I'm going to go in between negative 1/2 and 1. Well, great point is 0. So that's what happens at 0. So when x is 0, 0 plus 8, put a 0 in, that's going to be positive on top. 0 minus 1 is negative. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is positive. So I'm going to have a negative and a positive. I'm going to have a negative. So it should be a negative in between there, which it is, because I'm looking at the answer key. And then finally, everything to the right of 1, let's just pick in, let's pick in 2. So when x is 2, what happens to this thing? When x is 2, the top is positive because it's 10. The first quantity is positive, and the second quantity is positive. Everything is positive. There you go. Negative, positive, negative, positive. And that is the correct answer. Hopefully that is good to go for everyone.